Hello everybody, it's January 30th, 2014. We've been shut down in the school for a couple snow days, so I thought it was a good opportunity to catch up on some things that I've been wanting to do. From time to time folks ask me about my training background or my background as an instructor, and I don't talk about myself all that often, especially if I'm on the floor, I'm trying to teach class, and when new comes in and they ask me a couple questions, I got to give them the Cliff Notes version, but I figured I'd put this out there for folks, even members of our school, because on the floor I'm dedicated to students. I'm not really sharing my war stories or anything like that, but for those who want to know what I'm about and what my training's about, you can watch this video. So, talking about my martial arts training first, in 1991 I began formal martial arts training. In those days we didn't have the internet, we just pretty much picked a school that was close to our house, and I ended up going to an American Kempo karate school. I was very fortunate in the fact that the school that was closest to my house was a very high quality school that had very good standards of conduct for their employees, good standards of conduct for their students, and they also had a standard of abilities that they wanted us to have. So I really was fortunate in that fact that I found a good school. Another beautiful thing about that school is that it was we had an American kickboxing element at the school. We'd have class all throughout the week, Monday through Saturday, but Wednesdays and Friday nights were what we called sparring class, where we'd work on American kickboxing principles. The owner of our school was he's a black belt under Joe Louis. Joe Louis, the great yet late American kickboxing godfather, if you will. He'd come to our school quite often for seminars and things like that. We also had Bill Wiles come through, another great American kickboxer. He came through a number of times. So we were exposed to great American kickboxers, and that's where I learned my hand skills, learned my footwork, and I learned the things that made me successful later on in Muay Thai competition. So I went to that school from 1991 to in the 2000s. At 2000, I did earn my second degree black belt in karate, so I was very proud of that. But during my time at the karate school in 1993 or 94-ish, don't really remember the date too well, somebody had brought a tape of the UFC tournament into sparring class, and we watched it afterwards. And originally we thought it was a fake. We just saw some little guy doing a martial art from a country we didn't know anything about, Brazil, beating all these big, strong, huge people. So initially we thought it was fake, but we quickly realized that it wasn't, and there was something to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So that sparked my interest in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at first, because as a karate guy or American kickboxing guy, either way, you're always standing up working on your feet. We didn't have a ground element. So in those days, Jiu-Jitsu knowledge was hard to come by. I bought a Panther Productions video and watched a couple things on tape, but it wasn't like formal training. But the great thing was when I went to the University of Delaware, I met a guy through mutual friends named John. And John he trained at the Renzo Gracie Academy in New York. And he was just a white belt, but he would get together with me and a couple of other friends, and we trained a couple times a week. He would show us jiu-jitsu moves, and we would work on our jiu-jitsu skills. And I was amazed at that point how me as a martial artist of many years at that point could get schooled on the ground by a white belt. And I really saw the power of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu right then and there. Eventually John got transferred to another school or dropped out, that I'm not sure, but he was no longer at school with us. One semester he was there, and then the next he was gone. So that ended my training for a little bit, and again it was informal. But as soon as I graduated from college, I was mobile, I had a car, I worked and lived in Delaware. I found out about a school in Philadelphia called Maxercise. It was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy, probably the first in Pennsylvania, one of the early schools on the East Coast. So I'd make the trip from Delaware to Maxercise a couple times a week. While I was there was Maxercise, Steve Maxwell himself, I believe was a brown belt, but most of the classes were taught by a man named Phil Miglioris, or his brother Ricky Miglioris, who Phil was a purple belt, Ricky was a blue belt. Those guys now are very established, very esteemed black belts. So great opportunity for me to train with guys of that caliber early on. But I was one of many, thousands of guys from Philadelphia probably went through that school. So I was just a faceless guy in the school, but I learned a lot of solid jiu-jitsu techniques then and there. But work had taken me away from that school. I'd moved for work, and it was much easier for me to go to a newly formed Royce Gracie Academy in Philadelphia, so I started going there as opposed to Maxercise. But again, I just got lucky and had another great opportunity, because in those early days, Royce would come through the schools. He came to our school once. Horian and Henner came to our school, so I had the opportunity to train with those level of martial artists. And in 2000, when Royce came to visit us, he was training us and watching us roll and rolling with some of us. After class, he awarded me my blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And as a lifelong martial artist, and having somebody like Royce Gracie who's achieved the things he achieved at that time, and somebody who I just very, very much looked up to, for him to award me a blue belt in the art that his father created was a very mind-blowing experience for me. So a very just one of a kind of experience for me as a martial artist. But eventually I trained there for quite a while, and work yet again moved me to Maryland. I was working outside of the DC area, and training's always been part of my life, so I looked up a couple schools. I settled upon the Evolve Academy, owned and operated by Mike Moses. and I knew Mike Moses by reputation. I'd seen him compete as a purple belt. I liked his philosophy. I liked his skills. He was also a Muay Thai guy, something I wanted to get into. So I started training Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the Evolve Academy. Eventually I ended up on the fight team where I was going to be a sparring partner. That was my initial thought because I had a good job, sales job. I didn't really see myself as a ring competitor at that time. But I was on the fight team helping the guys get ready for fighting, training, doing all those types of things. One day Mike Moses and Coach Kiley, who was the fight coach for the Muay Thai team, came to me and said they wanted me, amongst a couple of other guys, to represent the school in the WKA North American tournament. It was called the Nationals at that time. So I was real excited about it. And it really formed my fighter training philosophy, because training for one Muay Thai fight is tough. It's a very, very rough game. Even at the amateur level that I competed at, you're not allowed to knee or elbow each other in the head, but knees to the bodies are allowed. You can clinch people. Obviously, knockouts are something that happen, so you have to be prepared. And we didn't have to prepare for one fight. We were expecting to be successful, so we had to prepare for multiple fights because it's a tournament format. So I was fortunate enough in that tournament, through good training and through mental toughness, to go undefeated in that tournament, as there's something, again, I'm very proud about. And it goes back to, number one, the karate training I had as a youth to toughen me up, to teach me hand skills, to teach me distance and timing, and then obviously adding the Muay Thai skills in and the intense fight training that I got at Evolve Academy. Eventually, as the story goes, I got moved again for work. I came down to North Carolina, found Clayton, fell in love with this town, and I plan to stay in this town for the rest of my life. But I found a school in Raleigh that I was training Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai at, and it just didn't click with me. Good training, but just wasn't in my mindset or philosophy. But I eventually found my way to Professor Todd Wheeler of Immortal BJJ, who's also in Raleigh. And he's my Jiu-Jitsu instructor, and I've been with him now for many years. So very excited about the things that Professor Todd and I have been able to do together. He's my mentor in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's somebody I look up to personally, and he has the kind of philosophy that aligns with my philosophy when it comes to training martial arts inside the academy and then outside the dojo as well. I also train my Muay Thai now under Ace Ramirez, Master Ace Ramirez out of New Jersey. I'm a certified coach under him. There's a number of schools that are under Ace Ramirez. I'm in front of Master Ace multiple times per year, training with him under his tutelage. So it's just over the course of my life training, I've made it a point to make sure that I'm going to places, I'm going to find the people that are going to embetter me as a martial artist, give me the skills that I want as a martial artist as well as a human being. And I've been very fortunate to find good people. But it's come with a cost because it's not easy. I haven't just stuck in one corner of the world. Through my travels, through work and other things, I've been able to go to different schools and see what works and see what doesn't as far as training, training yourself, training your fighters and things of that nature. So that's my training in a nutshell. I'm still a student. I'm very leery of anybody who claims that they're not a student in martial arts anymore. They're an instructor, but they're not a student. From the day till the day I set foot in the grave, I'm going to be a student of the martial arts, and I think it's important for instructors, even if you've reached the master level, to maintain that student mentality of always growing, always moving forward, and keeping your mind open. So I hope this gives you some insight about my training, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about my development as an instructor in just a moment. Thanks a lot.